The rain came down in heavy silver sheets that night, blurring the city lights into smudges of gold and blue. On Fifth Avenue, cars hissed past puddles, umbrellas collided like restless wings, and people rushed to escape the cold drizzle. But on the corner near Lexington Park, a girl sat alone beneath a flickering streetlight, her thin blanket soaked through, her arms wrapped around a cardboard sign that read, "Just trying to survive." No one noticed her. Not really. They looked, and then looked away. Everyone, except one man. Ethan Cole stepped out of a sleek black Mercedes, irritation flickering across his features. He was late for another charity gala, ironic, considering the event's purpose. A billionaire, tech innovator, and face of countless foundations, Ethan was the man who gave back to the community. Cameras loved him. Magazines painted him as the perfect success story, brilliant, disciplined, unstoppable. But behind his immaculate suits and million-dollar smile was a hollow that no amount of luxury could fill. He walked briskly toward the hotel entrance, adjusting his cufflinks, when a small voice cut through the storm. "Sir, you dropped this." He turned. The homeless girl, young, maybe 21, stood in the rain, holding out his leather wallet. He hadn't even realized it slipped from his pocket. Her fingers trembled, and her clothes were soaked, but she smiled. Ethan took the wallet, half expecting a trick. "You could have kept it." She shook her head. "It's not mine." For a moment, he just stared at her, puzzled, maybe even annoyed by her simplicity. Most would have taken the cash and disappeared. But this girl, this stranger who had nothing, chose honesty. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lila," she replied softly. "Lila Grace." He glanced toward the gala doors, where laughter and champagne awaited, then back at her, drenched, shivering but strangely radiant under that dull light. "Do you have anywhere to go, Lila?" She smiled again, this time faintly. "Everywhere's full." "It's okay. I'll be fine." Something about that answer, so gentle, so resigned, lingered with him. He nodded stiffly, slipped a few bills into her hand, and walked away. But he didn't make it to the elevator. Standing in the hotel lobby, surrounded by glittering chandeliers and people who wore kindness like jewelry, Ethan's conscience whispered louder than the music. "You help strangers on stage, but ignore them on the street." He turned back. The girl with the cardboard sign. When he found her again, she was huddled beneath the awning of a closed flower shop, trying to shield her cardboard sign from the rain. Ethan approached quietly, holding a takeout cup of hot chocolate and a bag of food. "Still fine?" he asked. Her eyes widened in surprise. "You came back." He handed her the food, trying to play off his discomfort. "You shouldn't be out here. There's a shelter on." "I know," she interrupted softly. "But it's full." "It usually is." Ethan crouched beside her, his expensive suit soaking in the puddles. "Do you have family?" "Had," she said, tracing circles on the cup's lid. "My mom passed 2 years ago. Dad didn't handle it well. I left home after that." There was no bitterness in her tone, just quiet acceptance, the kind that came from too much loss too soon. Ethan studied her. Beneath the dirt and exhaustion, her eyes were startlingly clear, bright, hopeful even. It struck him that she hadn't asked for money, only offered help. "Why didn't you keep the wallet?" he finally asked. Lila smiled faintly. "Because sometimes, what you give is all you've got left." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay awake in his penthouse, haunted by the image of her in the rain. For years, he'd donated millions to causes he never saw, faces he never met. But Lila, she had a name, a voice, a heartbeat. She wasn't a statistic, she was real. The next morning, before his meetings, Ethan returned to the corner. She wasn't there. For days he looked, but she seemed to have vanished, another invisible soul swallowed by the city. Until one afternoon, walking through the park, he heard a familiar hum. Lila was sitting under a willow tree, sketching on a piece of scrap paper. Around her, children had gathered, curious, laughing, watching her draw whimsical pictures of clouds and dreams. "You found a new crowd," Ethan said, approaching. She laughed lightly. "They pay better than most adults. Sometimes in cookies." "Do you always sound this happy?" "I try to," she said. "Happiness doesn't cost rent." Her optimism disarmed him. He sat beside her on the grass, ignoring the confused stares of passing strangers. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel out of place. The turning point. Over the following weeks, Ethan began visiting her, first with excuses, then without. Sometimes he brought food, other times, just conversation. She told him about her dreams of becoming an artist, how she'd once painted murals for her high school. But when her mother fell ill, she dropped everything to care for her. After she passed, life spiraled, rent unpaid, job lost, the world moved on. Still, Lila never complained. "You're different from everyone else out here," he told her once. She shrugged. "Maybe I just remember what being loved felt like." Those words pierced deeper than she knew. Ethan had money, status, control, everything except love. His parents' cold ambition had shaped him into a mirror of their emptiness. The more he earned, the lonelier he became. But with Lila, the air felt lighter. He found himself laughing again, lingering longer than he intended. One evening, as the sun bled orange over the skyline, she asked quietly, "Why do you keep coming back, Ethan?" He hesitated, then admitted, "Because when I'm around you, I remember what it means to feel human." She smiled, that same disarming warmth that had stopped him on the street weeks ago. The offer. Winter arrived early that year. The nights turned brutal, and frost painted the windows in white breath. Ethan couldn't bear the thought of Lila sleeping outside. One night, he found her by the riverbank, coughing into her sleeve. He took off his coat and wrapped it around her. "You're coming with me." She shook her head. "Ethan, I can't." "You can," he said firmly. "Just for tonight." He brought her to his home, a sprawling glass mansion overlooking the city. Lila stood in awe, her reflection glimmering across marble floors. "This is where you live," she whispered. "Feels more like where I hide," he replied. He offered her a guest room, warm clothes, a hot meal. She resisted at first, then finally accepted. For the first time in months, she slept in a bed. The next morning, she left a note on the kitchen counter, "Thank you for reminding me what warmth feels like." But she didn't leave. She stayed, helping the staff, painting in the garden, filling the silent halls with laughter. Ethan watched the way she moved through his world with gratitude instead of envy. It humbled him, and slowly, something unspoken began to grow between them. The fall and the gift. One evening, while hosting a charity dinner, Ethan introduced Lila to his colleagues, proudly, as his friend. But whispers spread. Some guests sneered, mocking her background. One woman asked if she was part of his outreach program. Lila excused herself quietly, her dignity intact but heart trembling. Ethan found her later by the balcony, wiping tears. "Why do you care what they think?" he asked, gently. "Because for a second," she said, voice breaking, "I thought I belonged." He cupped her hands. "You do." But she pulled away. "No, Ethan, I can't be your charity case." The next morning, she was gone. Weeks passed. Ethan threw himself into work, but everything felt meaningless. The house was quiet again. The laughter gone. Until one day, a delivery arrived, a canvas, wrapped in brown paper. On it was a painting of him standing in the rain, under a flickering light, and her, holding out his wallet. Beneath it, a note read, "Sometimes, what you give away finds its way back to you." At that moment, Ethan realized, she hadn't needed his money. She had needed his faith. The transformation. Determined to find her, Ethan began funding a new community center, not for profit, not for recognition, but for people like Lila. He searched shelters, art studios, and street corners, but months passed without a trace. Then one spring morning, while visiting the newly opened center, he heard children's laughter echoing from the art room. Inside, bright murals covered the walls, painted with vibrant, hopeful colors. And there she was, Lila, in a paint-stained apron, surrounded by children, teaching them to create beauty from brokenness. When she saw him, her eyes filled with tears. "You found me," she whispered. He smiled. "You never really left." They stood in silence, hearts speaking the words their lips couldn't. Ethan walked her through the center, a place he had named Grace Haven. "It's for people like you," he said softly. "People who still believe in kindness, even when the world forgets it." Her voice trembled. "You did all this, for me." He shook his head. "Because of you." Tears spilled down her cheeks as he took her hand. "You changed my life, Lila. Not with money, but with truth." She smiled through her tears. "You changed mine too, Ethan. You showed me that even in the coldest cities, hearts can still find warmth. The epilogue, Love Beyond Wealth. Years later, their story became one whispered across newspapers and social media, the billionaire and the homeless artist. But behind every headline was a truth no one saw. It wasn't a tale of charity or luck. It was a story of two souls who healed each other. Ethan sold one of his companies and devoted himself to expanding Grace Haven across the country. Lila became an artist whose murals spoke of love, hope, and humanity. Together, they built something money could never buy, meaning. And sometimes, late at night, when the city slept and rain brushed softly against their window, Ethan would take her hand and whisper, "You gave me everything I never knew I needed." And she would smile and reply, "You gave me back my name." Outside, the world kept moving, fast, loud, uncaring. But in one small corner of that vast city, two people had proven that compassion could rewrite even the hardest hearts. Because sometimes, the richest man is the one who learns to give. And the poorest girl is the one who teaches him how to love. Moral. True wealth isn't measured in what you own, but in what you give, in kindness that asks for nothing in return, and in love that sees value where the world sees none.